Right, let's continue. So this wood here is quite nearby. We often come walking here when we can, sometimes in the summer, often in the winter. But it's, I mean, in the summer, it's really, I mean, at the moment, you can see that it's not. I mean, obviously, the trees have lost their leaves, and you can see quite a long way into the woods itself. I mean, it's not massive, but big enough, and it feels quite wild once you're in there, particularly in summer when it's all the foliage kind of like makes it seem very different. What was that? All right, it's a tree. It's creaking in the wind. Wow, in fact, all the trees are creaking. It's quite spooky. I'm glad I'm not here at night. Oh, there's a tree falling down at the head. Let's get a bit closer and we'll walk all the way around. There's also a kind of a chateau and a folly down here with a moat, which is pretty spectacular. It's recently been renovated. When I say recently, I'm talking about the last 10 years. So it's not really recently, but let's see if we can climb over this thing. Here we go. What we've got here, I think we've got some sort of sequoia tree here, which is obviously incredibly ancient. I mean, you can see, hold on, let's have a look. Here we go, hold on. I mean, look at this thing, it's bloody massive. The scale of it is huge. Getting a bit closer, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's ridiculous. I mean, it must be at least 500 years old, and the one next to it's dead. You can see. Look at this thing. We'll get a better shot of that in a minute. Look at it, it's beautiful, eh? Absolutely amazing. You see? Right. Okay. Look at that. Absolutely gigantic. I'm guessing the lens that I've chosen isn't really doing it justice because it's wide angle. So let's zoom back in a bit and see what it looks like. Now this here is what I'm talking about. Now this is a folly. Obviously a folly, not really a genuine kind of castle or chateau. It's got a moat, but it seems more kind of decorative than anything else. And obviously those kind of battlements over there are pretty puny and really decorative more than anything else. It's been relatively recently, well, like I say, it's been renovated. It's had its roof put on. It was kind of derelict before, so I think we can have a look at the roof. Yeah. So look at that. Amazing. Right, let's go this way. I know the big problem with wandering around here is that there are lots of dogs at the farmhouses, and obviously farmers and people like that don't really like people wandering around. because very often I guess they're up to no good, or um, a lot of these properties are pretty isolated, and people have got dogs to, frighten people off, I guess. I think we might be able to get a better view of the chateau, of the folly, in a minute. You can't really see it at the moment properly, so we'll just the farmhouse here, just in front of it. Continue down here a little bit more, creaking trees. So I looked at the weather app on this phone, and it said 5 degrees, feels like -5, and I have to tell you, from an earlier kind of walk I went on this morning when I was testing the camera and the microphone and the gimbal together, it really felt very cold. Here we go, let's see if we can see the beautiful the chateau. You can see it in the distance. We'll get a better shot of it in a minute, hopefully. You can see the surroundings, beautiful. I think it might be owned by some sort of like oligarch, or I mean a very wealthy person that renovated it, because it was in a real state, a really terrible state, in fact. So look at that. In fact, the roof was all rotten and had all kinds of stuff, problems with it, until this guy came along and completely redid it, renovated the whole thing. It seems to be empty at the moment, so I'm not really sure what's going on. It seems to be vacant. Right, let's go down here a little bit and hopefully a dog won't come out and start barking at us. I think, like I said this morning when I was having a wander around and testing the microphone, you do get quite a lot of hunters about this time of year. There was a hunt that was called in during the summer. We had a phone call from the hunters. They seemed very kind of well organised, and they phoned the house to say that there was going to be the hunters were going to be around shooting sanglier or wild boar, which are causing a bit of a nuisance in the fields, which has got a lot of corn in the fields. Hold on, let's cross this road a minute. Yeah, so there's so many kind of wild boar that are causing a bit of a nuisance and eating a lot of crops. So the hunters have permission to try and shoot them, I guess. Anyway, they arrive. They make a lot of noise. They're not really kind of stalking about. They've got dogs and some sort of trumpet or whatever, some horn or something like that. And they ride around until they've kind of found something and try and shoot it. But the problem was, I think they managed to kind of corner some sort of wild boar, and it charged them, and a dog was injured. So basically, they missed the wild boar, didn't manage to kill it, and the wild boar managed to charge them, injure one of the dogs, and got away. To eat corn. In all these fields. Here we go, another folly. This one's been going for years, this guy here. I mean, they do seem to like lakes or ponds, cabins and ponds quite a bit. So that, you know, because it's such an agricultural area, a lot of the farmers have ponds, you know, lakes or ponds to kind of gather water, I guess, for the drier kind of periods when there's a drought. So there's lots of, they call them letang, and this one here is obviously man-made. I mean, all the ponds around here are really man-made, and this one's gigantic. It's got like some sort of gazebo and some guy, some kind of, was it a cutout of a guy fishing? And I don't know if you can make it out at the moment. I'll try and get a better view of that. But obviously, it seems to be a place for. It's almost like it's an art installation. He seems to have done all kinds of things, not just build a cabin. Let's have a look. It's not very well lit actually at the moment. It's kind of silhouetted against the sun, which is coming from over there. So let's see if we can get it. Better view. So he's got all sorts going on here. Hold on, let's see. See if I can see that. Hold on. See if I can. Oh, very, very, very windy all of a sudden. It's one particular pond that I'm familiar with. There you go. Caught quite a few frogs in that pond. There's quite a kind of an invasive kind of species of what is it called? Like a koi poo, I think they're called. They're like massive rodents that are originally from South America, and they've been introduced into the French countryside by some dopes who thought it was a good idea, I guess, or maybe they escaped from somewhere. I mean, I imagine they were pets to begin with, but there we go. What's this? Some noise. Yeah, and they cause a real nuisance. They kind of, they eat all the fish in the ponds. So if you're interested in fishing, once they're in there, they're eating all your fish. So if you find that you've got one of these, what they're called capybara or koipu or something similar, this giant South American rodent, they can, you can call the Mary, the local mayor, and they'll probably give you some cages and you can try and trap them. I've never seen one in France. Certainly never seen one in that pond. I've seen them in the River Jordan, actually, in Israel at the there's a kind of a baptism center on the River Jordan, and they're just swimming around while people are getting baptized, which is quite disconcerting because they look like giant rats. I have to say I'm not very keen on rats, never mind giant ones. Here we go. Some seed planted. Look at that. I'm not sure what that is. Needless to say, I didn't really want to take a dip in the River Jordan when I saw these great big rodents swimming around. You know, they weren't particularly shy, these things. They were just swimming around quite brazenly. And I'm guessing it's not that healthy to be swimming in water that's got those in them anyway. So, but they're all over the place these days. Oh, we've got a car coming. Apprentice. Somebody learning to drive, maybe. A for apprentice. Getting back to aviation for a minute. Looking at this wooden model that was made by my wife's granddad in the well, while he was working. I guess they had some downtime while they weren't being kind of mistreated by the Germans and forced to work. Needless to say, he was kind of a prisoner of war. I naively thought that prisoners of war were kind of subject to the kind of Geneva Convention, but apparently that's not the case. And in 1940, when he was captured, like I said, he ended up in hospital, having been wounded in the Battle of France, and then he ended up in what was then East Prussia, working at the Focke-Wulf factory in Stalag XXB, or in Roman numerals that is, or Stalag 20B, which is a massive kind of industrial zone at the time. These days, it's in Poland, in a place called Marienburg, I think. And yeah, he was. I hadn't realised this, but he was obviously. I mean, being forced to work. Basically, you had to work, or well, they forced it. They said you can either work or you can die. So I guess he chose to work, and in fact, there were many different kinds of nationalities who were prisoners of war, who were working at these camps, and there were thousands of these camps and sub-camps. I mean, the main one was 20B, I guess, and there were lots of sub-camps around and in the same area. It even goes as far as north of where the Focke-Wulf factory is or was. There was Danzig to the north, kind of west, and then there was Gdansk, I think. These days there's Gdansk there. I'm not sure. I don't think that's the same place. It might be. I need to kind of brush up on my my geography of that kind of period. And obviously I don't know much about Poland and that particular part of Poland, so I'm going to have to do some kind of research and try and work out. I've got an idea of what it looked like from the few photographs that we found last night, but clearly it was a massive industrial zone that got a lot of attention from the US AAF and I'm guessing the RAF at night. So during the daytime, it was bombed at least twice by the Americans using B-17 bombers, and I've seen a few photographs of a raid in 1943 where the kind of one of the pilots said that the accuracy of the bombing was very good, and you can actually make out the kind of factories, or at least the Focke-Wulf plant below. But it wasn't just, I guess, the Focke-Wulf plant that was there. Like I said, there was at some point there were shipbuilding, there was agriculture there as well, and at some point I think there were farms around there. So not just factories, workshops, but farms. And apparently the worst thing about the whole kind of experience in the 5 years that he spent as a prisoner of war there working as a forced labourer was that they had nothing to eat, and it was a real struggle to find things to eat. I think he learned one German word, which is Kartoffel, or yeah, I think, which means potato. Obviously, they were starving, and I hadn't realised that they had to wear. They wore these kind of stripy kind of uniforms. I'm guessing like all prisoners of that kind of period. So yeah, he would have been. Must have been a pretty traumatic experience. I've just got to find out more about the whole, well, the area and the assembly plant. I mean, there's loads of documentation out there. I've just got to find it and gather it. And in fact, there are lots of accounts already kind of published that I found last night, and websites kind of created by people who kind of and witnesses of that kind of period and those locations. Having said that, because there were so many different nationalities, they've all got a different account, and very few of them are kind of actual historians. Because it was such a vast kind of like enterprise, sort of supplying the German war machine. There's obviously they're not all aware of each other. I mean, so for example, the British may not have been aware of the French, or the Russians. So there were like Russians, Poles, Canadians, French, Belgians. I mean, all kinds of. Hold on, sorry, I just got a twig tangled up my foot. So obviously these guys were supervised, and they weren't really allowed to kind of wander around wherever they wanted. But they obviously needed people to work in the factories, otherwise the war machine would kind of come to a halt. And in actual fact, one of the bits of evidence that suggests to me that he was involved in, the production of this aeroplane is that he seems to have had access to the kind of the scraps and the same kinds of materials that were used in the aircraft itself. So, for example, the model that I'll hopefully take a video of at some point soon is made of mostly of wood, but there are bits of aluminium and maybe plastic and steel and things like that. That would have been maybe the scraps or the trimmings from some of the work that they were doing. And because I can't imagine that if you're working, on a farm in a field, that you'd have access to kind of materials like that, because you wouldn't be able to kind of just wander into the factory like that. It would have been very kind of tightly controlled. It's a lot nicer down here than it was this morning. Blimey, bit of sunshine. The other, well, another indication that he knew this aircraft particularly well and had observed it in great detail is that the fact that the undercarriage is very, very accurate. So much so that one of the wheels, the landing gear, is made in such a way that it is kind of articulated at the same point. Also, the wheels are positioned not kind of true or not kind of straight to the ground, which is very typical of that particular aircraft. So he must have seen it at close quarters, you know. And there are even kind of panels on the model, which kind of like he seems to have kind of like almost highlighted a particular access panel on the aircraft fuselage or on the tail, you know, or he's even got the like the canopy is kind of the right shape for a Focke-Wulf 190 A7, A8 maybe, possibly A9, but you can see also that he's managed to kind of carve the shape that the cannons, the 20mm cannons at the front of the in front of the cockpit are very clearly defined. So again, that's another identifying feature of this particular aircraft, unlike earlier models which didn't have such prominent cannons at the front. And bearing in mind he was there from like 1940 till 1945, I'm sure that he maybe took part, although very much unwillingly, in the construction of an assembly of other variants of the Focke-Wulf 190. Yeah, it's amazing. Apparently there were lots of attempts by people working in the plant to kind of sabotage what they were making, because obviously they weren't really on the side of the Germans, and they were obviously you'd have to be quite discreet about that. You couldn't really sabotage or do something that the supervisor or the people kind of inspecting the work would notice. It'd have to be very discreet, otherwise I imagine it could result in pretty serious punishment, if not death. So pretty grim kind of working conditions, I have to say. But I'm very, very curious to find out more about what he did, what his experiences were. And apparently he's written a diary, which I don't really have access to yet. And it's written in very cursive French handwriting, very small, and obviously in French, but it's written very small and in pencil. So it would be great to maybe, I'm not sure how many pages this kind of diary contains. I'll have to try and find out. But ideally, I would be able to at least scan this diary to find out a lot more, because if you write a diary, it's because you're trying to make a record of something that happened to you. And apparently, he got married the year before he was wounded and taken to Germany. And his wife didn't hear from him for 3 years. So yeah, nice. There are a few books out there. I'm guessing, well, there's one in particular that I'm probably going to buy on Amazon, although it is a hardback, which I don't normally choose to buy because they take up too much space on the bookshelf. But there's one in hardback called Stalag XXA, so that's 20A. So I imagine that particular prison camp may have been related to 20B, but I'll have to find out. But it's going to involve a lot more research, and hopefully I'm going to get some more kind of photographs of the location, the camp, and what happened. And well, it's very exciting, really, to me, to be somehow kind of connected to this story. just unbelievable. Because as far as I knew, my wife told me that her granddad was a farmer, and he seemed to have some kind of life that wasn't particularly dramatic. You know, he lived in Le Bocage most of his life. You know, which is the Bocage is what I'm walking through now. This is the Bocage. It's not the Bocage, Le Bocage in Normandy. There's the Le Bocage in all kinds of places in France, and these kind of fields, kind of surrounded by kind of hedgerows and trees and little woods and thickets and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I mean, the family lived here for kind of generations before the Germans came along, before he was called up to fight in 1939. So yeah, so as far as I understood it, his life was very ordinary. But it turns out what I discovered yesterday, and it wasn't really discovered. What I confirmed yesterday was that he was really involved in working on, something. He's involved in pretty dramatic events. I mean, imagine being bombed by the Americans and the British. You know, they had bomb shelters apparently, obviously, because they had tunnels, and I'm guessing that much of the kind of the assembly plant was maybe underground or protected in some ways. But imagine that being kind of bombed quite regularly. I might imagine that the place would have drawn quite a bit of attention from kind of Allied bombers. So it's funny to think that some of these photographs of aerial photographs of the actual raids, he was actually in those photographs somewhere, albeit kind of in a bomb shelter somewhere, not visible, and hiding from the bombs kind of raining down on them. Must have been terrifying, absolutely terrifying. But he must have been a tough cookie, because he survived the war and survived the march home, or survived the march out of Poland. I'm guessing back through Germany and then back to Paris, where he wasn't particularly repatriated. I think there was so much chaos at that time that apparently my wife's dad, well, my father-in-law, he told me that his dad had said that when he arrived in Paris, they didn't have any help from the government to be kind of like repatriated with the families, or they were just kind of like left to make their own way home, which is terrible, really, if you think about it. It's awful, isn't it? He's walked all that way to get back to France, and the kind of welcome that he got was to have to make his way home from Paris. And Paris is like, these days it's a good kind of 5-hour drive from around here. Yeah, it's a good 5-hour drive from Paris. So imagine what the journeys were like in those days, without the amazing roads and without the buses and the trains, and without the funds to even get here. I mean, how would you even make a journey like that in those days? Anyway, I guess all's well that ends well, because if he hadn't survived the war and survived this particular camp, I never would have met my wife. I wouldn't. I mean, half my family are French now. Yeah, it's crazy to think that. I mean, my kids are French, no, half French, half British, half French, but none of this would have happened. I certainly wouldn't be standing here walking around the fields in France if it hadn't been for him surviving. So it's amazing. I met him on a couple of occasions, and I had no idea that he had such a, such a story to tell. I wish I'd been able to ask him a lot more. Because obviously when you're a young man, you don't really have that many questions for kind of older people, particularly when you're kind of, involved in, trying to make your way in the world and have a career and all the rest of it. You're pretty kind of egocentric, and you meet somebody's granddad and you don't necessarily think that they've got a very, very interesting story to tell. Anyway, like I said, I only really met him a couple of times. Yeah, but what a life, eh? I mean, pretty dramatic, amazing, really. It's amazing to me that he endured all of this and survived the war to come back home and be a farmer for the rest of his life. Unbelievable. I'm not really sure how long this video is going to be. I'm not sure how long the battery's going to last. This is the first time I've actually used the microphone with the gimbal, with my phone. So I'll be very interested. I'm hoping, I've got my fingers crossed, that the sound quality will be good enough, even though obviously what I've got to say, it needs a bit of work. And I need to work on my kind of presentation skills and, what I try and find something interesting to say about all of these subjects. But hopefully it's recorded, some of this, and I'll be able to kind of upload it to YouTube and get a few views. But like I said, this is the first time I've used the microphone, and actually to come, in combination with the gimbal. And I think that if it's working as well as I hope it is, I'm going to be really well. I've got lots of other projects in my head, and all of them involve me using a microphone. In fact, most of my films so far, I've removed the sound because the sound quality was so bad. So if the sound quality in this is better than that, then I can start making better quality films, longer films, and hopefully improve the content so that more people will want to watch it. But yeah, what a day. I'm so glad I came out this afternoon, because it was so cold this morning. It was freezing, and even though it seems quite blustery now, it's really warmed up quite a bit. Anyway, that's me waffling. I mean, I guess I've been out for about an hour or so, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, so I'm going to walk back to the house now, and hopefully the other guests will have arrived for Réveillon, which is like Christmas Eve in France. God, can you hear how windy it is? I mean, I guess this is more seasonal weather than it was yesterday. If I'd have shot this video yesterday, it would have been very different. So So like I said, the last time I was here, I was out at dusk with my son, and we were hoping to see some deer. And in fact, we saw some because we'd seen them just up the road here. Show you where. Hopefully, is there a car coming or not? Yes, there is. No. Okay, yeah. So we saw the deer around about here. I'm guessing they were, traversing from field to field using these kind of paths. And then, in fact, we saw the deer just over there. Amazing. And quite a few of them, maybe 4 or 5. But like I said, it's very rare for me to see any deer here. And in fact, I've only seen deer 3 times since I've been visiting this place over the past 25 years. So I was really happy with that. Right, over and out. Thank you for watching.